From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry, and we are here in the 22 News Plus studios, as we always are. Are you the best at what you do? Are you the best car mechanic, the best doctor, the best hairdresser, the best plumber, the best janitor, whatever it is you do in your life? Probably not, but that's okay because you're just like everyone else. Today, I've got Dr. Rob Robinson sitting across the desk from me, and we're here to talk about the advantages of being average.
And there are many, my friend.
Average people.
The average person
is everywhere.
Yes.
So why, Rob, why do we have such stress about being the best? And you know what? And I have to say, I think it's partly on us as parents too, because we say to our kids, hey, you got to be better. You got a B plus. Why didn't you get an A minus? Whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, that. First of all, this topic, by the way, I thought was brilliant.
Good. Well, thank you.
No, seriously, great idea. And I mean that sincerely. This amazing topic, especially when you start looking into it. But I think, in part, it's driven by the culture we live in, right? Highly competitive, right? And I think a lot of it's driven by just what we're exposed to in social media. Because, I mean, if anything, social media is self-aggrandizement to the max. Well, it's like everything I do is like incredible. And so you measure yourself
up against that. And I've always said this, and I've said this to my kids. I say it to everybody I know. Nobody posts the bad stuff they're going through. Correct. Everything's like, oh, my husband's the best. My wife is the best. Yet at the end of the day, like, God, I need to get out of the house. They're driving me nuts. You never see that.
There's no question. I mean, right. No one posts like stories about, Timmy coming home with D's, right. and celebrating that. I mean, they don't. So right. It's an advertisement for yourself all the time. And we're exposed to that. Plus, I mean, it's driven by advertising. Oh, yeah. And just the culture. I mean, we're a highly competitive, get as much done and accomplish as much as you can do in the shortest period of time. And that drives people to this idea of perfectionism. And then the type A stuff and everything else.
It's interesting when I look at those who are not even, above average, but you look at Tiger Woods, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Bill Gates, I'm not even get away from the sports world.
Sure.
You talk about these people who are, I call them freaks in a good way, because like Tiger Woods, for example, you and I are both
they're
golfers.
Outliers.
Exactly. They're just unbelievably good.
Yeah. I mean, but it's hard to even understand.
The average golfer is average. Exactly. I mean, the average hockey player, the average doctor is good. You want your doctor to be good, but there's nothing great about them.
I think that's a really good point. And as a golfer, for example, I mean, I have a buddy who's he's a great golfer. I'm clearly average. If I shoot like an 88 or a 90, I'm happy.
Oh, you and me both.
That round is great for me. And so this guy he's a very good golfer. And he said, one of the reasons I like playing with you guys, meaning a couple of other guys we play with, is because it's not as competitive.
Yeah.
It wasn't even fun playing with these other guys because it was all about
you're always on
all the time. Yeah. So it's stressful as heck. It wasn't fun. Now you can laugh. You can, you can learn from your shot. You don't have to, you're not slamming the clubs on the ground or throwing them up in trees.
But most people are average.
Yes. And, I mean, when you think about it too, I mean, those are the people that make the world run.
Right. So, right? So it's funny. I probably shouldn't say this, but when I first got into the TV media business, I had a boss, and I was not a great student. I'll be out there. Anybody who knows me knows that I was not a great student. Right.
I'm with you.
And so when I first started in the TV business, the guy's looking at my resume or whatever, and he asked me that, and he goes, "Don't worry. TV is the business of the C student."
Wow.
Yeah, and this was 36 years ago. Yeah.
No,
but he goes, it's the business of the C student. You learn as you go, and you become better as you go. Well, you're not going to learn TV business in school.
No, and I think that one of the things, I mean, this ties into this whole idea that, remember the book that Stephen Covey wrote, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
Yeah.
That was a bestseller for years and years, many years ago. In any event, I mean, he said, one of the attributes of effective people, highly effective people, not in their mind, just the average person, is you serve others anonymously.
Right.
You don't have to be out there at the head of the class getting all the credit. I mean, we've all been in situations when people who really think the world of themselves in an egotistical way, they come into a room and it kind of sucks the air out of the room.
Right.
I mean, and that can have a profound effect on the dynamic of social connection when you're with people who have to be outstanding at everything, right? And they'll tell you how outstanding they are.
Enough about you talking
it's nice
about
to meet me.
Yeah, right. What are some of the traits of the average person?
Well, I mean, I think that, I think basically that's one of them. It's
Okay.
that you can serve others anonymously, right? You don't have to have all the credit. You're happy to go in and do your share of the work. I think also that, the average person typically is less stressed out.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, if you look at, typically type A people and people who need to be the best at everything they do, they're way more symptomatic than someone who doesn't put that demand on you. Right. So stress-related illness is lower in people who are comfortable with who they are, right? They don't have to be the best at everything. So blood pressure's down, musculoskeletal problems are less, so they're less symptomatic.
Well, you just think about the amount of health issues that come from stress.
No,
you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, relationship issues, and then if you're trying to be that above average person, you're just piling on top of all of that.
There's never enough. I mean,
right.
that's one of the things that's driven. I mean, one of the interesting things, if you look at the ego and the impact that we all have an ego, but one of the interesting pieces is that when we're ego driven, it's never enough, right? And we're only satisfied for a very short period of time, right? We make it to the promised land, and then hanging out in the promised land is not all that good after a month or two, and then we're off to the next thing.
Right. Grass is always greener.
So people who are just average humans and are content with who they are, it doesn't mean that, they don't push themselves to do stuff, but they don't have to be the best, right? They're content with just being who they are. So as a result, they're not in competition with everybody. So they become better listeners. They're open to learning. They're willing to admit their mistakes more. There's a degree of humility in who they are, right? They're actually kind of cool people to be around.
Yeah, right.
When you're around
more
somebody,
relatable.
right? When you're around somebody who's got to be the best at everything, I mean, that is not usually a pleasant social experience.
It's sort of uncomfortable,
right?
Yeah.
It's like, really? To yourself? I mean, honest to God, what do I have to do for an encore here? You can walk away if you're not intact enough, feeling like inadequate.
Oh, that's funny.
Unbelievable.
We are up on our first commercial break. Stay with us. We've got plenty more to come. I'm going to talk about being average. We're back in a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of InFocus. Dr. Rob Robinson is across the desk from me today. We're talking about the benefits of being just plain old average.
I mean,
you're C student, you're average. You're just run-of-the-mill average.
You're comfortable with yourself, and you get to row your boat gently down the stream more, right?
I think it's ingrained in American culture for decades, even way back, America, we were taught that the U.S. is a powerhouse in world wars. We got to be the best that there is out there. And it's just been like that for more than 100 years.
There's no question.
And it's only getting worse.
Right? That's what we're surrounded by.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, interesting point. I mean, if you succumb to that and feel that you've got to be part of that wave of being the best or I'm nothing, I mean, that sets you up for, we talked a little bit about the physical stuff, but the mental health issues are incredible.
You're going to be depressed all the time.
Absolutely. That's why people have to really be judicious about how they use, Facebook and social media, like we talked about as well. But that has significant mental health implications. So people who are average and comfortable in their own shoes are generally happier people.
Okay.
And I got to tell you the story. So, we're talking about average folks, and I'm reading this book called Love Johnny Carson that just came out, and it's a great book. If you were, grew up in the Johnny Carson era, but if you even didn't, you can appreciate the story.
Yes.
So George Goebel was going to be a guest on Johnny Carson. Now,
Yeah.
George Goebel, compared to megastars, was pretty average.
Right.
And
a lot of people probably don't know who George Goebel is.
That's probably true. Listen, you can look, and by the way, the episode that I'm going to talk about, you can look up on YouTube TV if you want to see it. Johnny Carson said he thought in his career that was one of the funniest episodes of the Johnny Carson show that he could ever remember. So they moved originally it was in New York, and they moved the show out to Burbank. And in Burbank, California, it was a whole different thing. It was California, right? Everybody's laid back.
Exactly.
People would show up even they won't book down the show. It's like people walking in here, right? You got guests, they just walk in.
Right.
So one night, Goebel's going to be he's scheduled guest, but he's got to follow Bob Hope, who walked out on the set, and Dean Martin, who walked out on the set. So Goebel's back in the green room, and he's thinking, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm just an average guy. I'm just an average guy. How am I going to compete with these guys? So, and Goebel looks like your average Joe. He doesn't have the rugged look of Dean Martin and the overwhelming, success of Bob Hope. Exactly, right? So he's this mediocre kind of guy in his own mind. So he comes out, he sits down, he's got got their cocktails and cigarettes.
Looks like a coffee mug.
He sits down and he goes, this show would be nothing without me. That's his opening line. So people are laughing. And then he says to Johnny Carson, he said, do you ever feel like you're a tuxedo and you're a pair of brown shoes in this thing? Carson laughs. And then Carson starts asking the guy, so tell me about the fact you were in World War II. He says, yes, I was. And he said, well, where were you stationed? He said, and Goebel was a pilot and a pilot trainer. And he said, I was stationed in Oklahoma for the entire war. He said, yeah. He said, and then, of course, the audience is laughing. Average guy, World War II, never saw any action, just Oklahoma.
Right.
And so everybody's laughing. And Goebel says, every time I bring this up, people laugh. But the entire time during World War II, there were never any Japanese fighter pilots that got beyond Tulsa. And people went crazy. This guy had a completely average career, came out there and busted everybody up, was the funniest guy on the set. So you don't have to be the best to have this impact. It's a great example. You can look this up on YouTube TV.
That is amazing. I mean, not only is that a great story, but it relates to all of us, and he put it in a comedic sense, on the Johnny Carson show that made it. But to your point, Carson probably thought that was the greatest interview ever.
And if you watch that clip, you'll see that compared to those two guys, it was just an average Joe, just the way he looked, the way he dressed, and the way he carried himself. But he killed it, right? Because he didn't have this big ego. And the other thing where I think research comes into this, there was a book that was written by Carol Dweck called the Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And to make a long story short, in that book, she discussed her research about how she compared kids that were told, you are absolutely the smartest human being I've ever met. You are the brightest. You are the best. You're incredible. To a group of students or groups of students that were simply told, you're a hard worker.
Right.
And in her research, she discovered that the kids and the groups that were told that they were hard workers rather than you're the absolute world's best at what you do, the hard worker groups were far more resilient because they didn't give up.
Right.
If they weren't the best, the group that were told that they had to be the best, they gave up easily. If they weren't the best, they just crashed and burned. Interesting, tied to our golf analogy earlier on. Right. I mean, when
the stress,
the internal stress,
and these are kids,
right? So you just when you're not experiencing success, the people who are driven to be the best all the time catastrophize about the simplest mistakes, and they make mountains out of molehills.
And it's funny, that's a phrase our parents used to always say: "Stop making mountains out of molehills."
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, so people who are just hard workers, average people, tend psychologically, in measures of resilience, tend to be far more resilient. They don't crash and burn.
Wow.
They don't. They look at failure differently than people who
absolutely.
have to be
Right.
the absolute best at everything. They say, okay, this is part of the learning curve. What went wrong? Let me figure this out.
And keep
Right?
moving forward.
And like in golf, I
Right.
mean, if you shoot one into the woods, which is not uncommon,
How about if you don't shoot one into the woods?
right?
Too funny.
But you produce a result, you make the correction, and you go
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
You don't, like we say, you don't slam the clubs on the ground or rip the clubs off the back of the cart and walk off the course. But this is what happens when you have to be
when
the
you set
best.
the bar too high.
Correct.
We are up on our second commercial break. We've got plenty more to come. Stay with us. We're back after this.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone. It is today's In Focus. We're talking about being average. I'm average. I'm not Lester Holt. I'm not Tom Brokaw. I'm just an average guy here who's got a curiosity, and I've come to embrace my averageness, and hopefully you are doing the same. Sitting across the desk from me today is Dr. Rob Robinson. We are talking about the benefits and advantages of being average. Dr. Rob, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
God bless you, my friend. It's great to be here.
It is, in the first portions of this conversation, we've really reiterated, it's okay to be average. I mean, most people are average, but we talked, and I want to dive into it a little bit more about, there are a lot of health aspects.
Oh my gosh.
About being average.
There's no question about it.
We touched the surface of stress, which again, if you're trying to, you and I are golfers. Let's bring it back to Tiger Woods for a second. You look at the amount of stress that he went through in his life, initiated by his parents to be the best from a very young age.
Yeah.
Drugs, alcohol, infidelity.
I mean, the list goes on and on.
Exactly.
But those are all, I mean, to your point, which I think is an excellent point, all symptomatic of the pressure.
Right. And
then the physical breakdown.
I look at him now. Is he 50 yet? Close to it. He might be, right?
I think he is, yeah.
But I look at him now he's just, I think he's basically not an average golfer, but I think he's embraced the fact that I'm just a guy.
I think, and thank God for that, right? Because
absolutely.
when you, I think that when you surrender to that doesn't mean when you say, okay, I don't have to be the best to be okay. That doesn't mean you give up on life.
Right.
That means that you have just taken a step at being able to surrender to the truth that, hey, we're all in the same boat. There really isn't, quite honestly, one person whose value is higher than another human being's.
Not at all.
We all have the same value. I mean, right? I mean, that's not like this, your value is more one day and you're less than this. It's all the same.
The line I've used, and I love it. I don't even know where and when I saw it, but it was, you never see a U-Haul truck behind a hearse. Right?
Perfect.
I've gathered all this stuff. I'm the best this,
right?
You can't behind Tiger Woods' hearse. You're not going to see a U-Haul full of his trophies.
Exactly. Right. And when you ask, I mean, you've heard this many times, but when you ask somebody who, has had a lot of success and, they're in their 80s and they've been, fortunate enough to live, a healthier, longer life, what would you do differently? They would often say that I probably would have driven myself as crazy with the pressure that I placed on myself, and then all of the implications that had in my dynamic of connection with other people, my family, my kids, my spouse, whatever. I mean, it's significant. And the health differences for people who are, high achieving, have to be the best. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best, but if you put that demand on yourself, that if you're not, you're something less than, that's where I think you begin to get symptomatic.
And you're just putting undue stress upon yourself.
No question.
It's funny you talk about the things people think about in their dying days and ages. Never does anybody on their deathbed go, I probably should have spent more time at the office.
That's exactly
You
right.
know? You know,
I mean, truthfully,
right?
right?
No.
I, you know, I, in a sense, what they say, and this is, I think true across many dimensions, is that I just wish I had was able to row my boat more gently down the stream.
Yeah.
You know, the stop and smell the roses thing. You know, and I think that that's another distinction between average and people who need to be perfect and high achieving all the time. That you can live in the present moment more and appreciate the simpler things, right?
Absolutely.
That the simple things actually resonate because you have time to stop and experience it because you're not driven by this thinking that am I okay? Am I better than this person? Am I better? It's constant. The comparisons are unbelievable,
And
and the competition's unbelievable.
it's okay to just what we call fly under the radar. Do your job, fly under the radar. You know, um, do your 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever your hours are. And just be a good person.
Right.
Live your life.
And when you talk about that, I mean, where essentially would businesses, institutions,
Right.
schools, where would they be without that core group of people who come in, roll up their sleeves, they get the job done every day, they go home. That's what makes this
Makes the world turn.
country work.
Absolutely.
I mean, the world work,
Right.
right? The average person, right, who just gets it done. They don't have to be the best. They come in and they do it anonymously and they go home and enjoy the rest of their life.
That is a great way to end. Dr. Rob Robinson, thank you so very much for joining me today. What a great conversation.
Thanks for
Good
having
stuff.
me, Patrick. Great to see you, man.
Likewise.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.